Chosen one, I want to describe something you know. That feeling, the one that sits in your chest when you have been faithful and quiet for so long that you have started to wonder whether faithful and quiet is all this is ever going to be. When you have prayed, held on, believed, and the silence stretched past the point where it still felt like a season and started to feel like a sentence. When you watched someone else step into what you thought was supposed to be yours, and you smiled, and you said the right things, and then you went home and sat with the weight of a question you were too afraid to finish. You have not said this to most people. You carry it. What I want you to understand before anything else is that there is a pattern, a consistent, recurring pattern in how God prepares the people He is about to do something extraordinary through. It always involves a period that looks, from the outside, like being forgotten, a period that feels like being buried. But here is what no one tells you about a seed. It is not buried to die. It is buried because the ground is where the becoming happens. Because what is being formed beneath the surface cannot be rushed, cannot be forced, and cannot be built under anyone's gaze. You have been in the ground, and I am here to tell you God has been watching every moment of it, calling it necessary, calling it good, and preparing something that is about to break through the surface in a way that shocks everyone who thought they already knew your story. This is His letter to you. Stay right here. Before we go any further, I need to tell you what this letter contains because I want you to stay until the very end, and I want you to know why it matters. By the time we finish, you will understand exactly why the hidden season you have been walking through is not a mistake. It is a method. You will see your own identity through the lens God has been using all along, including the names He has always called you that no one else has spoken out loud. And at the close of this letter, we will do something together that seals everything you receive today into your spirit in a way that stays, not for a day, permanently. Stay with me all the way through. What comes later is the part that changes everything. Now, there is a specific kind of tired that comes from waiting well. It is not the tiredness of laziness. It is not the tiredness of someone who gave up. It is the tiredness of someone who kept showing up, who kept believing, who kept their hands open and their heart ready, and then woke up one more morning in the same place they were the morning before, carrying the same unanswered question like a stone they cannot put down. You know that kind of tired. Maybe it shows up in the small things. The way you move through your ordinary days with a sense of something unfinished underneath everything. The way you sit in rooms full of people and feel strangely alone, not because no one is there, but because the thing you were made for hasn't fully arrived yet. The way you sometimes catch yourself in a quiet moment and search for the version of yourself you were so certain you would be by now, and wonder where they went. That is not the feeling of someone being punished. That is the feeling of someone being prepared. Here is what I need you to understand about the specific season you are in. God does not misplace the people He has marked. He does not anoint someone for a purpose and then accidentally leave them in the wilderness past their time. Every person who has ever walked the path you are walking, every person who has been hidden, overlooked, passed over, and quietly set aside has arrived on the other side of that season, carrying something they could not have built any other way. Think about Joseph. Not the Joseph standing in Pharaoh's court with the gold ring and the fine linen. Think about the Joseph in the pit, the young man thrown in by his own brothers, the people who should have believed in him most, sold, falsely accused, forgotten in a prison for 2 years after the one person who could have helped him walked out without a second thought. 2 years. And the text does not say Joseph was in despair. It says God was with him. Quietly, in the dark, in the ordinary, invisible days that no one recorded because nothing visible was happening. That is the season you are in. The unrecorded days. But here is the thing about unrecorded days. Every single one of them is doing something. A seed does not apologize for the years it spends underground. It does not look at the trees around it and feel shame about its hiddenness. It simply does what it was designed to do in the dark. It puts down roots. It builds a structure, that will one day hold enormous weight. And it does the work that the sunlight never sees. You are not behind, you are in the ground. And everything happening in you right now, the deepening, the questioning, the quiet stripping away of who you thought you were, all of it is root work. The tree you are becoming is being built by exactly what you are going through. I cannot tell you your specific timeline. What I can tell you is the pattern, and once you see it, you will not be able to unsee it. But the question I have not answered yet, the one I want to bring you to, is not just why you have been hidden, it is what God actually did with you while you were there. And that is where this gets deeper. There is something the hidden season costs beyond the obvious things, beyond the opportunities, beyond the relationships, beyond the moments where you watched someone else step forward while you stayed in place. What it costs is something internal, something in the way your mind moves. Think about the child you once were, the one who understood things quickly, the one who made connections no one told them to make, the one who felt the world more deeply than the people around them, who had a sensitivity to things others missed, a creativity that came without effort, an intuition that arrived before the explanation. That version of you moved through the world with a kind of sharpness that felt almost electric. And somewhere along the way, that sharpness dulled. Not dramatically, not in one moment you could point to, but gradually, across years of systems that were never designed for the way your mind works, school structures that rewarded compliance over creativity, environments that treated sensitivity as a weakness, a pace of life that never gave your nervous system the space it needed to hear itself. The frequency that once came so naturally became harder to access, and because it happened slowly, you began to believe that it was simply what growing up felt like. David knew this, not the warrior David, the shepherd David, the young man in the fields with his songs, anointed for something enormous, and then sent back to tend the sheep, as if the anointing had never happened, day after day, in the ordinary. His gifts fully present inside him, alive in him, real, and yet running at a fraction of what they were designed to produce, because the conditions around him had not yet aligned with what he was carrying. The anointing was not cancelled. The design was not removed, but the full expression of it was waiting for a restoration of what had been suppressed, a realignment between what was placed in him and the environment he was called to inhabit. Here is something I came across while putting this together that I want to share with you. Not as a requirement, not as a product announcement, but because it connects directly to what I am describing, and I think it deserves an honest mention. A neuroscientist named Dr. Robert Lake, a man who spent 34 years studying the human brain, identified something that researchers at MIT, Harvard, Princeton, Stanford, and other institutions had been documenting for decades. A specific frequency the brain was designed to operate at. They call it the gamma wave. Some researchers have called it the brain's highest functioning state, the frequency connected to clarity, to intuition, to creative insight, to that quality of mind where answers arrive before you go looking for them. The frequency that was fully alive in you as a child. What he found, and this is where the research becomes uncomfortable, is that this frequency does not naturally decline with age. It is suppressed. Gradually, consistently, by the structure of modern life, by stress, by systems not designed for how your mind actually works. He called it the decline effect. When you hear what researchers described as its symptoms, mental fog, difficulty concentrating, a feeling of being less sharp than you once were, a dimming of the intuition that used to feel so reliable it sounds almost like a spiritual description. Because in many ways, it is. The world was not just taking your time and your opportunities, it was dimming the very frequency you were created to operate at. What Dr. Lake developed after 34 years of research was a 7-minute audio track designed to re-engage that frequency, not through effort, not through years of practice. simply by listening through headphones for 7 minutes. The technology in the track, a process called brain entrainment, works with your brain's natural resonance to reactivate the gamma state, the same state children operate in naturally. The same one the research links to that sharpness, that intuition, that creative clarity you remember. It is called the genius song. I want to be clear about what this is and what it is not. It is not a prophecy. It is not a guarantee of any specific outcome. It is a tool, a scientifically grounded, research-backed tool for restoring a natural brain state that was never meant to be taken from you. It does not replace your faith or your formation. What it supports is the mental clarity that makes it easier to hear, to think, and to act on what God is already doing. To access this kind of brain recalibration through traditional methods, biofeedback therapy, with a specialist, you would pay $300 per session. The home equipment runs close to $7,000. Even a dedicated meditation practice requires months of consistency that most people cannot realistically maintain. Dr. Lake compressed decades of that research into a 7-minute audio file that goes straight to the source. The standard price for the Genius Song is $49, but because Dr. Lake wanted this to be accessible specifically to people in the middle of the kind of season we are talking about today, the price for anyone coming through this message is $39, not available on Amazon, not through any search engine, not anywhere else. With that price, you receive 4 bonuses at no additional cost. An audio track designed to activate focus and confidence in children. The original book that inspired the film The Secret, available on Amazon for $20, included here for free, a guided visualization covering 4 areas of your ideal life, and an infographic of the 5 most important habits for the future you are stepping into. And everything is covered by a full money-back guarantee. Unlimited use before you decide. No questions asked. One more thing, and this matters, there are sites copying the name and selling something that does not contain the actual brain entrainment technology. They look real. They are not. The only way to receive the genuine product with the verified technology, the 4 bonuses, and the full guarantee is through the link I have placed in the description and the pinned comment of this message. Do not search for it anywhere else. What you find will not be what I am describing. If this feels relevant to where you are, the link is there. And with that said, because your restoration is far bigger than any single tool, I want to take you to the truth I came here to deliver, the one that changes how you see yourself. Not for a day, permanently. What God sees when He looks at you is not what the people around you have seen. And the difference between those 2 documents, the one written by human observation and the one written before you were born, is where this letter is going next. Every person walking this earth carries 2 documents. The first document was written by the people around you, built from what they could observe, measure, and categorize. It contains your delays, your setbacks, your unrealized potential. The moments you were passed over, the seasons where you seemed to stall while everyone else moved, the times you showed up and were not chosen. That document has been read by more people than you know, and many of them drew their conclusions from it and moved on. The second document was written before you were born, and that one, the one containing your design, your assignment, your anointing, the specific purposes woven into you before you had a name or a face or a history, that one has never been touched by anything anyone observed. Not by the rejection, not by the waiting. Not by a single day of the hidden season. The world can only read the first document. God only works from the second. Think about Esther. In the court of Ahasuerus, the first document on her read, orphan, refugee. A woman with no political standing, no family with influence, no obvious reason to carry weight in the decisions of a kingdom. If you had read that document, you would not have predicted what was coming. But heaven had a different document entirely. And when her assignment was ready to be activated, when the preparation inside her aligned with the need outside her, everything that seemed to disqualify her became exactly what was required. For such a time as this. That phrase was never a surprise to God. It was always written. The circumstances were simply the delivery mechanism. Chosen one, I want to speak directly to who you are, not in general terms. Not in language that sounds beautiful today and evaporates by tomorrow. I want to name what I see, what the second document says, because I believe you have spent too long reading the first one. You carry the identity of a light bearer. The person who brings clarity into rooms that were confused before they arrived. And here is why that matters for where you have been. Light bearers cannot help but carry light, even in their darkest personal seasons. That sensitivity in you, the one that sometimes felt more like a burden than a gift, is not a flaw in your design. It is the mechanism of your calling. The world did not take it from you. It is still there, waiting to fully operate in a context that can hold it. You carry the identity of a seer, someone who perceives patterns before the people around them have words for what is shifting. That is why you have always felt slightly ahead of the conversation, why things settle into your spirit before they land in your understanding. Why you have sometimes known something was coming before it arrived and been dismissed for it, and then watched it arrive anyway. You carry the identity of the voice, the one who speaks what others feel but cannot articulate. That is why the right words come through you in moments you were not prepared for them. Why people have said, in the most ordinary conversations, that you named something they had been carrying for years without a name. That is not a coincidence. That is your design moving through you, whether you invited it or not. You carry the identity of the cycle breaker, the one who ends what came before. The patterns in your family, in your generation, in the systems you move through that were never meant to continue through you. The waiting is not only about you, it is also about what you are being positioned to interrupt. What could not have been interrupted without someone who had walked exactly this path and paid exactly this price? And you carry the identity of the wounded healer, the one who transforms personal pain into medicine for others. The very seasons that felt like your disqualification are the raw material of your ministry. What you walked through alone in the dark is exactly what someone else is going to need someone to have walked through first. I know there is a voice responding to this right now, a quiet, careful voice. The one that says, but what if this is for someone else? What if this is beautiful language that is true for certain people, and I am simply someone who needed to hear something encouraging today? I want to honor that voice, because it makes sense. When your gifts went unrecognized long enough, when the second document was ignored by enough people for enough years, something in you learned to pre-reject itself before anyone else could. It was not weakness, it was survival. You learned to protect yourself from the disappointment of believing too fully by believing a little less. You learned to hold hope at a slight distance so that, if it didn't come, the fall wouldn't be as far. That pattern is not your truth. It is your armor. And armor is useful in battle, but it is not meant to be worn forever. You do not have to argue that voice out of existence right now. You do not have to convince yourself. Just hold this thought gently, like something resting in an open hand. That story is not from the Father. Because here is what the seed knows that we sometimes forget. The seed does not experience its own growth. It cannot feel itself building roots. It only experiences the darkness, the pressure, the weight of the soil above it. And yet the tree that eventually breaks through the surface carries every year underground in its grain. The depth of its roots comes from exactly the length of time it spent in the dark. You do not emerge from a hidden season unchanged. You emerge with the substance of everything you survived built into your structure. What is about to break through in your life will carry all of that with it. Now, I want to bring you to the center of this letter. The deepest truth I came here to deliver, the one that recontextualizes everything, the hiding, the suppression, the waiting, the identity you have been carrying in secret, and places all of it into a frame that changes how you see this season permanently. Here it is. God was never silent. The silence was the nature of the work being done. The waiting felt like absence because the formation does not produce visible evidence until it is complete. But the absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence. And what I want you to understand, not as comfort, but as a structural truth about how God operates, is this: the shock that is about to happen in your life is not a rescue, it is a reveal. He was not far away and finally coming back. He was right here, the entire time, building something in secret that public exposure would have destroyed before it was finished. Think about how every major shift in the lives of Joseph, David, and Esther was preceded by the exact same pattern: a season where nothing visible was happening, a stretch of ordinary, quiet, unrecorded days, and then, suddenly, not gradually, not incrementally, suddenly, a door opens, a name is called, a position is given. A word arrives at exactly the right moment to exactly the right person. The word "suddenly" in the ancient texts is not a description of luck, it is a description of completion. The suddenly is the moment the hidden work reaches full maturity and breaks through the surface. It was never random. It was always the culmination of everything that came before it, and its timing was determined not by human effort, but by divine readiness. Your suddenly is not late. It was always scheduled. You were not ready for it before. You are becoming ready now. And the people who have drawn their conclusions about your ceiling, the ones who quietly moved their attention elsewhere, who made peace with the idea that you were not going to be who they once thought you might be, they are working from an incomplete document. God is about to update their records. I want to read you the part of this letter that I came to read. I cannot tell you every specific thing God has written for your life. What I can do is give you the language of His heart toward you during this season, built from who He is, consistently and unchangingly, and from what I know you have carried. He saw the early mornings, the ones where you woke up and prayed into a silence that gave you nothing back and you prayed anyway. He saw the faithfulness in rooms where no one was watching, the love you gave that was not returned, the gifts you kept using even when no audience came, the moments you chose not to give up when giving up would have been completely understandable and no one would have blamed you. He did not record your waiting as wasted time, He recorded it as formation. Every day in the ground went onto a different ledger, not the ledger of productivity and visible progress, but the ledger of roots, the ledger of depth, the ledger of the kind of character that can carry the weight of what is coming without being destroyed by the size of it, and His response to all of it, His specific, personal, upcoming response is not going to be a whisper, it is going to be a testimony, and the people who forgot you will be the first to witness it. You are not the version of you that was overlooked. You are the version God sees. You are the seed that survived the ground, not just survived, was transformed by it. You are the formation that is about to become visible. You are the love letter being written, and you are nearly at the final page. Let me give you 3 things to carry from this. The first is simple, but it is not small. Begin speaking your identity in the quiet moments of your day, not as something you are trying to convince yourself of, as something you are reminding yourself of because it was true before you believed it, and it remains true in the moments when you cannot feel it. Let the words form in your mind, slowly and without rushing. I am the light bearer. I am the seer. I am the voice. I am the cycle breaker. I am the wounded healer. Not performance. An act of receiving what was already written. The second is this: learn to distinguish the voice of formation from the voice of abandonment. Formation sounds like this is necessary, and it is working. Abandonment sounds like this is purposeless, and it will never change. When you hear the second voice, do not fight it. Simply ask one question: is this coming from the one who wrote the second document? You will know the answer. And when you know the answer, you can set it down. The third: when the old fear returns, and it will return, for a while do not try to eliminate it. Walk it through 3 movements. Acknowledge it. I feel this. Name its source. This is the voice of the waiting, not the voice of the Father. And then release it. This is not mine to carry. That is not spiritual theory. That is a practice. And every time you do it, you loosen the grip of the belief that formed to protect you and has long since stopped serving you. Let us close this letter together. Take one breath. Not because this is an exercise, because what we are about to do together matters, and I want you to receive it with your whole self. Father, we come to the end of this time carrying something we did not have at the beginning. Not just words, not just ideas, a shift small but real and permanent in how the person hearing this sees themselves and sees you. We are grateful, quietly, genuinely, deeply grateful for the seasons that were hard, for the years in the ground, for the mornings that felt empty, and the prayers that seemed to reach nothing, and the days that appeared to have no story worth recording, because every single one of them was on a different ledger. And that ledger is full. You saw it all. Every small act of faithfulness, every moment of holding on when letting go would have been easier, every love given without return, every gift used without audience. You witnessed all of it, and you called it good. So now, together, we release what no longer belongs to us. We release the belief that hidden means forgotten. We release the timeline built by human expectation that was never ours to carry. We release the conclusions others drew from an incomplete document. We release the habit of comparison, measuring this season against someone else's visible progress on a timeline that was never meant to be ours. We release the self-rejection that formed before anyone else could reject us, the armor that kept us safe and now keeps us small. We release the ceiling placed on us by someone who never had access to the second document. We release the version of ourselves that learned to be smaller to fit inside someone else's comfort. We release the wound of being overlooked. We release the shame of still being in the process. We release the fear that the suddenly has already passed and we somehow missed it. All of it released. It has no authority here anymore. And now we call forth what was always written. We call forth the light bearer, the full, unfiltered, undiminished carrier of clarity into every room, every relationship, every season ahead. We call forth the seer, the one who perceives what others miss and is done apologizing for the depth of that gift. We call forth the voice, the one who speaks what others carry and cannot name, who steps into that assignment without waiting for anyone's permission. We call forth the cycle breaker, the one standing at the end of every pattern that was never supposed to come this far, saying clearly and with full authority, it stops here, this generation, with me. We call forth the wounded healer, the one who takes everything the hidden season cost and transforms it into medicine for every person walking behind them. And we activate the divine connections, the relationships written in the second document, being prepared in their own hidden seasons, finding their way forward at the appointed time. We cover what is rising. We guard what is being built from premature exposure, from the eyes and voices that would weigh in before it is ready to hold the weight of their attention. What has been lifted, let nothing pull it back down. Against self-sabotage, against the patterns that have interrupted every previous breakthrough, against the internal voice that says, not yet, not you, not this, we say, that voice has no authority in this new season. Now, out of the quiet place and into the open place, I am the one God chose. Before the world had its opinion, before the hidden season, before any of this, I was chosen. I am the seed that survived the ground. Not just survived, was changed by it in ways I am still discovering. I am the formation about to become visible. Everything the darkness required of me has made me capable of exactly what the light is bringing. I am the testimony being written. And the final chapters have not been read yet by the people who thought they already knew my story. I receive what was written before I was born, without earning it again, without waiting for external confirmation. I receive it, Now, here, in full, it is done, it is sealed. What God began in the hidden place is complete in the open place. Amen. Take a breath. If this letter landed somewhere real in you today, if any part of it touched something that has been waiting a long time to be touched, I want to invite you to do one thing. Type the word "seen" in the comments, not for me, as a declaration for yourself, as the first public act of receiving what God has been saying privately for longer than you have been fully listening. Seen. Let that be the first thing you claim out loud. And if there is someone in your life who is in the middle of a hidden season, someone who has been faithful in silence for a long time and needs to know they are not forgotten, share this with them. This letter was not only for you, it was for everyone it reaches. Go carry what you just received, not lightly. Carry it like someone who knows who wrote it.